Excuse me.
What's up?
What are we doing here?
Oh, I'm taking a video.
I'd appreciate it if you'd go somewhere else with that, okay?
Oh, it's fine. It's just a video.
It's offensive to me. Excuse me, I'm trying to have a private conversation. Could you respect that?
And she just didn't get it.
It's just a video, man.
I hear you.
Okay.
I'm having a private conversation. Would you please move?
It's just a video.
Do you not understand what I'm saying? It's a private conversation.
All right, calm down.
Leave.
Calm down.
Leave.
It's just a video.
F you. You got it? And the horse you rode in on. Jesus Christ, you have no respect for anybody. What are you going to do, follow me around now? Jesus.
Surveillance Cameraman was a YouTuber whose content consisted of a sort of inversion of candid camera pranking. Instead of setting up a gag and filming it with a hidden camera, the cameraman approaches random strangers on both public and private property, openly recording them in order to elicit a reaction. And reaction is a polite way of saying it. It wasn't uncommon for subjects to become angry upon realizing they were being filmed, in some cases going so far as calling 911 to complain, or even threatening the cameraman with violence.
If you do not stop, I will call the police.
Okay. What are you gonna tell them?
That you're recording me.
In public?
In public.
What are you doing?
Oh, hey, what's up? I don't know. Dude, what are you doing? Get away from me with the camera. Dude, I'll take it. I'll get up and take it and smash it. Get away from me.
What are you doing?
Dude, don't make me get up. That's something you'll take with you now. Or I'm gonna take your camera and smash it.
And these responses in particular are what I find so fascinating about these videos. Why is it that these people become so angry about being filmed in public? In one instance, Surveillance Cameraman encounters a subject leaving a drugstore, and like so many others, the man reacts negatively to being recorded.
Can I ask who you are?
What?
What are you doing?
I'm taking a video.
Of what?
Just a video.
Why are you taking a video of me?
Why not?
I don't really care for other people to just be taking a random video of me.
Didn't you just come out of the drugstore?
Yeah.
They have cameras in there.
So?
Now, obviously, there are situations in which surveillance is logical and justifiable. A business owner might be concerned about theft, robbery, or property damage, and so it's reasonable for them to record what goes on in their establishment. But what about the increasing levels of surveillance in our daily lives? After all, it's becoming more and more common to be recorded both openly and secretly, not just by cameras in stores, but by services and devices we use every day. For instance, every time you type a search term into Google or click on a search result, that information is being cataloged and used to build a profile of your browsing habits, to build a reference for your interests and thoughts. When you take a picture using your smartphone, Google and Apple are able to determine where you are based on geolocation data and associate that picture with your location, observing the patterns of where you move around the city or region in which you live. If you own a smartphone, virtually everything you use it for is constantly stored and analyzed in order to better understand your usage habits and preferences. But to make matters worse, computer hardware manufacturers are in on the game as well, evidenced by Intel's Management Engine and the recently discovered Minix operating system. Minix is a hidden operating system built into the hardware of Intel chipsets, running on its own dedicated CPU. Minix comes complete with common drivers for other hardware components such as USB, memory, storage, graphics, audio, and even a TCP/IP server. In other words, Minix has total 100% access to everything stored on your computer, and all inputs and outputs, and there doesn't seem to be anything the end user can do about it. It operates on a subsystem level which is inaccessible to the user, referred to by security analysts as Ring -3, several layers below the normal Ring 3 environment in which the end user's operating system resides. So if you think you're safe, it doesn't matter which operating system you prefer. Whether you're running Windows, Mac, or Linux, any machine with a modern Intel chipset or CPU is likely to have Minix running on it. Intel describes the management engine and Minix as a way for businesses to remotely manage their computer systems. But the management engine represents such a huge security risk that even Google is concerned about it and wants to remove it from their own infrastructure. And if Intel is doing this, would it be the least bit surprising to learn that other hardware manufacturers like AMD or ARM architecture are using similar subsystems? All of this adds up to one straightforward conclusion. In a 21st century industrialized society, privacy is virtually non-existent. The only conceivable way to get it back would be to go off the grid entirely, to get rid of your internet connection, your phone, and your computer, thereby relinquishing everything that comes with these devices. No more electronic banking, no more social media, no more ease of communication with your loved ones, friends, or employer. Good luck participating in the economy that way. What's more, large tech companies aren't simply using this information for their own purposes. In many cases, they cooperate with government agencies such as the National Security Agency, who effectively have backdoor access to the telecommunications networks.
The inside story of what the NSA has actually been up to was discovered here in San Francisco by Mark Klein, a longtime internet technician for AT&T.
In 2002, I was sitting at my workstation one day, and some email came in saying that somebody from the National Security Agency, NSA, was going to come visit for some business. This NSA representative showed up at the door. I happened to be the one who opened the door. I let him in.
He was doing a background check for a security clearance for one of our field engineers. He was going to be working at the Folsom Street office, and they were building a secure facility there.
And I heard from our manager, Don, that he's working on some new room that's being built. So people start speculating, well, what's this new room being built?
Mark Klein got suspicious when the workmen constructing the room treated it as hush-hush. So how do you know that it wasn't just some kind of newfangled AT&T thing that was going beyond what had already been established for its security purposes elsewhere?
They wouldn't need the NSA for that purpose. The odd thing about the whole room, of course, was that only this one guy who had clearance from the NSA could get in there. So that changes the whole context of what this is about.
Klein's job was to maintain AT&T's internet service for several million customers, domestic and international traffic all mixed together.
We're talking about billions and billions of bits of data going across every second, right?
A coworker showed Klein how their internet room was directly connected to the secret NSA room through a special device called a splitter.
So what they do with a splitter is they intercept that data stream and make copies of all the data, and those copies go down on the cable to the secret room.
What this thing was is a very full-scale device to take all communication, voice and data, and send it both wherever it was supposed to go, but also shunt it off to a little listening room.
So what exactly was going on in that listening room? Klein found clues at work one day.
I came across these 3 documents, and I brought them back to my desk. And when I started looking at it, I looked at it more, and finally it dawned on me sort of all at once, and I almost fell out of my chair.
Klein eventually found detailed designs for the secret room. One of the first to see his documents was internet expert Brian Reed.
Lord, they had a lot of hardware, and I mean, they could, with the computers that they had there, they could do anything they wanted with that data. There was serious compute power available to process that wiretap data.
If you've ever made a phone call, sent an email or text message, or used social media, the likelihood of those communications having been intercepted by government institutions is very high. They're not just spying on potential criminals and terrorists, they're spying on virtually everyone who uses these communications.
In the intelligence game, blanket eavesdropping is called a driftnet, an electronic driftnet. But former NSA Director General Michael Hayden said no, that's not what was going on in the president's eavesdropping program.
This isn't a drift net out there where we're soaking up everyone's communications. We are going after very specific communications that
Now, you have General Hayden, the former head of the NSA, and the Attorney General saying this is not a drift net. We're not doing data mining in this program.
What they've said repeatedly is that we're not doing the drift net in this program. But it might be program number 2 or program number 3.
This program being what? The President's program?
Because they were talking about the President's program, and then the other things we're worried about tend to be happening in these other programs they haven't admitted to.
Is there any stop you from wiretapping without a warrant somebody inside the United States that you suspect of having al-Qaeda connections?
Clearly, Senator, that is not what's going on here, first of all. The President has authorized a much more narrow program.
So you're suggesting their denials are a word game, not a true denial?
Yep.
Have you looked at it closely?
I looked at the Attorney General's testimony very carefully, and every time he gave the big denials, they were attached to the words "this program."
Al-Qaeda to Al-Qaeda within the country, you're saying we do not get involved in those calls. Now,
not under the program in which I'm testifying, that's right.
To me, you're saying Al-Qaeda to Al-Qaeda within the country is beyond the bounds?
Certainly is beyond the bound of the program which I'm testifying about today.
Has the President ever invoked this authority with respect to any activity other than NSA surveillance?
Again, so I'm not sure how to answer that question. And the President has exercised his authority to authorize this very targeted surveillance of international communications of the enemy. So, I'm sorry, your question is?
Has the President ever invoked this authority with respect to any activity other than the program we're discussing, the NSA surveillance
Senator, I am not comfortable going down the road of saying yes or no as to what the President has or has not authorized.
He's a former judge. He's a smart lawyer. The Attorney General was speaking very carefully, but I think there could be lots of room after you read his testimony for other programs to be doing really unprecedented things.
In addition to monitoring these networks, the NSA also has an enormous toolbox of covert surveillance devices, many of them small enough to be hidden in consumer products as inconspicuous as a lamp, television, or USB flash drive. The screen you're watching this video on could be watching you at this very moment. That massive dragnet of data is used to market products to us, to understand us as human beings, and catalog our behavior through mass surveillance, for both public and private purposes. This isn't even getting into the obvious implications for political speech and censorship, which have been covered previously on this channel. In the United Kingdom and European Union member states, this is even more of an issue, as the relevant governments are now increasingly mandating that tech companies hand this information over to them for the purpose of censoring unapproved views. But to this point, everything I've mentioned involves the use of standalone devices. You can unplug and disassemble your computer. You can take the battery out of your phone or leave it at home. But what about devices you can't do these things with? Private companies have already begun encouraging employees to have RFID chips implanted as a replacement for key cards.
Melissa got chipped yesterday, but you had to be talked into doing this. How long did it take you to say yes to this?
I was a little hesitant at first, but I had 7 days to think about it, and once I learned the facts, there was no question in my mind.
Okay, one last thing we want to show you over here, Hoda and Matt. Go ahead, Steve. They can buy their goodies here in the break room by just using their hand. Real quickly, he's going to get a Kit Kat bar. And it's paid for, $1.06, guys. So the question again, as we asked you last week, are you ready to be chipped, guys? Let's send it back to you.
Wow. I'm kind of I don't know that I would do it.
No?
Would you do it?
I don't, for the convenience of it,
yeah.
Maybe?
Maybe?
Yeah. I don't know.
The argument for this essentially boils down to convenience. After all, you can't lose or forget an RFID tag if it's implanted in your body. But the security risks should be obvious. It's already been demonstrated that an RFID tag can easily be hacked or even cloned, whether it's in a keycard or in your body. Now you might say, big deal. That's just RFID. You can't track somebody with RFID. But there's not that much of a technological barrier to installing GPS tracking in such a device. Technology is constantly improving, and there's already a demand for such a device in the form of consumer hobbyists and concerned parents hoping to keep tabs on their children. To be fair, several US states have already passed legislation prohibiting mandatory electronic implants in humans, including Oklahoma, Wisconsin, California, and Virginia. But voluntarism isn't a guarantee. No one ever had to force us to accept the pervasive presence of surveillance cameras, smart devices, or social media. Technically, no one is forcing us to accept these things now, but they're still everywhere and very much a part of our lives, with most people giving very little thought to the prospect of being constantly monitored. At the risk of speculating too much, what could the implications be for our society if this were to become some kind of trend or social expectation? Sure, no one would be forcing you, but if a piece of technology is everywhere, being used by everyone, and is viewed as a normal thing, the societal pressure to use it yourself, whether you really wanted to or not, would be enormous. We already see this effect with smart devices and social media. Many employers and services already require that you own a smartphone or run a social media account. And there are certainly people who want chip implantation to become a normal thing someday.
Hi everybody, my name is Brian Johnson, and I would like to put a chip in your brain. Now I know that may sound a little sci-fi, that's probably what you're thinking, but hopefully you'll change your opinion in a few minutes. I started a company called Kernel a year ago, and I invested $100 million to create chips that would be implanted in the brain to help address disease and dysfunction. We're leveraging this emerging technology to also explore how we might extend human potential. A deep brain stimulator was approved by the FDA in 1997, and 125,000 people now have this implanted. Let's take a look at how far this technology has come. So we're going to see a video here. This gentleman has Parkinson's, and we're going to begin with this video of this stimulator on in the basal ganglia, and he's going to turn it off, and we're going to see what happens. Let's roll this video.
On and okay. And this is me when I turn it off. Okay, you won't be able to read that, it's shaking too much. So it's almost an instantaneous reaction. I can't control this.
So the electrical stimulation discontinues, and he loses control of his motor movements. His speech begins to slur, and according to Parkinson's patients, it's not only hard to express thought, it's hard to hold on to thought. Now let's see what happens when he turns this back on. Let's roll the second clip.
So I think party time is over. Almost automatically. Power comes back on, I'm steady. So
that is unbelievable. What an accomplishment by visionary scientists and engineers to figure that out. Now the secret here is if you ask a neuroscientist how or why this works, they couldn't tell you. We don't know. I find that actually very exciting, because if we can do this with a blunt instrument, in an open loop fashion, what could we do with greater precision, better microelectronics, and actually be able to see what happens when you stimulate?
These proposals are always offered up with sci-fi whimsy about curing people's neurological ailments and mental disorders, unlocking your car door or buying a meal with a wave of your hand, or making a phone call simply by thinking about it. But this wouldn't be the first time humans played with fire and got burned. Tech giants have already created some semblance of mind reading through a combination of other surveillance methods. Where could this conceivably go as neurobiology becomes more advanced and precise? What if it became possible to see inside your mind? Not just figuratively, but literally. It's hard to imagine that such an achievement wouldn't be abused, just as the internet and consumer electronics are being abused right now. Even with the present-day loose understanding of how the brain works, neuroscientists have been able to reconstruct visual information perceived in the human brain. By showing video clips to test subjects and measuring neural activity, these composite images were recreated in a cloudy resemblance of the original clips. It's very fuzzy, yes, but the fact that they were able to do this at all means that the methods and results will only improve from here on out. At the moment, concepts like brain chips or GPS implants are more science fiction than science fact. But judging by the levels of intrusion we already accept by both corporations and government, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if someday people lined up outside Apple stores for an iChip the same way they do for iPhones and MacBooks. Google, Apple, and Facebook are essentially having a race to see which one can become Skynet first. Google, in particular, has been shown to be receiving preferential treatment from the US government. In 2010, the Washington Post published a story about a deal between Google and the National Security Agency. Quote, "Under an agreement that is still being finalized, the NSA would help Google analyze a major corporate espionage attack that the firm said originated in China and targeted its computer networks, according to cybersecurity experts familiar with the matter. The objective is to better defend Google and its users from future attack." Google and the NSA declined to comment on the partnership, but sources with knowledge of the arrangement, speaking on the conditions of anonymity, said the alliance is being designed to allow the two organizations to share critical information without violating Google's policies or laws that protect the privacy of Americans' online communications. The sources said the deal does not mean the NSA will be viewing user searches or email accounts, or that Google will be sharing proprietary data. Unquote. So on whose authority is that guaranteed? Who would oversee such a partnership? Is Google beholden to the NSA, or is the NSA beholden to Google? It's impossible to know. For the last couple of decades, the discourse on mass surveillance has been mostly dominated by apprehension towards government institutions, with concerns directed at how that information could be used against citizens, and much less attention given towards the activities of tech industry giants. All of this adds up to a cooperative relationship between Google and federal, state, and local governments. The government scratches Google's back, and Google scratches theirs by giving them access to all of that sweet, sweet data. Remember this the next time somebody tells you that breaking up a company like Google would be evil socialism, because this is not a hands-off arrangement. This is not the free market at play. It is an incestuous relationship between two entities with little to no respect for your privacy, if there even is such a thing as privacy anymore. Oh, and by the way, over the years, surveillance cameraman's videos have been repeatedly removed from Google's very own YouTube service for bullying and harassment, but you can still find them on LiveLeak. Maybe the point he was trying to make was just too dangerous for Google. Sleep tight. Don't be evil, right?
Raising